British Columbia announced that the U.S. government has paused negotiations on the expansive Columbia River Treaty, saying the current administration is reviewing its international engagements.
Now, as the U.S. gears up for its election, Donald Trump has pledged to bring more water to drought-stricken California from Canada. While his promise isn't exactly a plan, he did sort of suggest water from British Columbia could just be diverted through Oregon and into the Golden State.
The deadly and devastating wildfires in Los Angeles are drawing new attention to U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's comments about one of Canada's most valued natural resources.
We have millions of gallons of water pouring down from the north with the snow caps in Canada and all pouring down. And they have essentially a very large faucet.
We're also moving forward with the essential work of building infrastructure on reserve, beginning with recognizing, as we all do, that clean water is foundational.
A silence has started creeping across the American West, one you can almost feel in the air. It's the sound of rivers running thinner, reservoirs dropping lower, and entire cities staring at a future nobody ever imagined possible. For years, experts warned that America was running out of time. Now it feels like time has already run out. And in the middle of this unfolding crisis, a single question has shaken the entire continent. What happens when the United States needs water and Canada says no? Everything began with a comment that many dismissed as political theater. But when Donald Trump pointed north toward Canada's vast freshwater reserves and suggested that America might someday need access to them, the reaction was instantaneous. Some Americans nodded in agreement, insisting that survival comes before diplomacy. Others panicked, sensing that this conversation was the first sign of something bigger, something more alarming. And in Canada, it triggered a response that stunned Washington. The truth is simple. The United States is facing a water crisis unlike anything in modern history. But Canada holds nearly a fifth of the world's freshwater. That imbalance is now forcing both nations into a conversation that feels less like a negotiation and more like the early tremors of a geopolitical showdown. The situation didn't become real until Canada pushed back. Hard, not with anger, not with threats, but with a firm, unshakable refusal. Prime Minister Mark Carney looked directly at the cameras and delivered the message with precision. Canadian water is not for sale, not for export, and not up for negotiation. Those words hit Washington like a cold wave, because this wasn't just a political statement, it was a declaration of sovereignty. To understand why this matters so much, you have to look at the landscape of the American West today. The Colorado River, the backbone of water supply for 7 states, has lost nearly a third of its flow. Lake Mead and Lake Powell, the 2 great American reservoirs, once considered untouchable, now sit at levels so low that boat ramps drop into dry dust. White mineral rings carve lines around their cliffs like scars marking how far the water has fallen. Cities like Phoenix, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and San Diego are no longer planning for the next decade. They're planning for the next drought. Farmers in Arizona are abandoning fields they once thought would feed the country for generations. California's agriculture, worth hundreds of billions, is tightening its operations to survive. And every year the heat rises, the rains shrink, and the forecasts grow darker. That's the environment in which Trump's statement hit the national stage. He didn't talk about war or pressure. He talked about survival, about a scenario where conservation programs and recycling systems simply aren't enough. He pointed north and said, almost casually, that Canada has water America might need.
We have millions of gallons of water pouring down from the north with the snow caps in Canada and all pouring down. And they have essentially a very large faucet.
Was it a warning, a prediction, a strategy? No one knew. But everyone heard it, and Canada responded with a clarity that allowed no interpretation. Mark Carney said that water was part of the nation's identity, its culture, and its environmental stability. He argued that to turn it into a commodity would mean losing control of it forever. And for Canada, that is a line they refuse to cross. This wasn't bluster. Canadians see water differently than Americans. Water isn't an industry, it's not an export. It's the foundation of the country itself. Massive lakes stretch across the provinces like internal oceans. Rivers run from glaciers through forests untouched for centuries. Wetlands support ecosystems older than the nation itself. Water is woven into Canadian identity in a way the U.S. has never fully understood, and that difference in perspective is now sitting at the heart of a silent conflict. While Canada sees water as something sacred, America sees water as something essential for survival. Millions of people depend on it. Entire cities depend on it. America's food supply depends on it. And when a superpower faces scarcity, pressure builds in unexpected ways. That's why Carney's refusal stunned Washington, because it signaled something deeper. Canada is not bending, not even for its closest ally, not even for the United States of America. Behind the scenes, U.S. analysts have been studying the possibilities. Pipelines stretching thousands of miles from northern rivers to the desert states, massive pumping stations, infrastructure projects bigger than the Keystone XL. Some believe these pipelines could become a symbol of cooperation, a sign of unity across the border. But Canada sees something different: dependency. History shows that once a resource starts flowing south, stopping it becomes impossible. International corporations step in. Trade agreements lock countries into obligations. Future governments lose the power to say no. Canada knows that if water becomes an export, it will no longer fully belong to Canada. Carney warned his nation about that future. He explained that water, once commoditized, becomes vulnerable. Corporations could demand long-term contracts. Foreign governments could claim rights through trade laws. And Canada could find itself trapped, unable to turn off the tap even if it meant saving its own people. That fear is not paranoia, it's history. Dozens of countries have lost control of their natural resources through trade agreements they never anticipated. Canada refuses to let water become the next example. Meanwhile, in the United States, the situation worsens. The American West is drying at a rate scientists predicted decades ago, but no one expected the speed. Hydroelectric power is shrinking. Agriculture is suffering. Cities are fighting for the same shrinking rivers. Climate models show that the next 20 years will be hotter, drier, and more unstable than any period in modern American history. A crisis like that forces difficult conversations, and Trump's comments, bold, blunt, and impossible to ignore, forced America to confront a question it had never seriously asked. What if the water runs out? The moment he suggested Canada might play a role, it shifted the balance. And the moment Carney rejected that idea, it sent shockwaves through Washington. Because now, for the first time, the United States is coming face to face with a dilemma no superpower wants to face. A resource it desperately needs belongs to someone else. This isn't about aggression. It isn't about threats. It's about survival. And survival changes everything. On the Canadian side, the refusal isn't about hostility. It's about protection. Protection of ecosystems, communities, and national identity. Indigenous populations, environmental groups, and citizens across the provinces support Carney's stance. They've seen how water scarcity in the U.S. is spiraling. They know that if Canada opens even one pipeline, the demand will grow year after year until stopping it becomes impossible. Their fear is simple. If the U.S. becomes dependent on Canadian water, then Canada becomes dependent on American approval. The Americans, on the other hand, see opportunity, cooperation, win-win solutions. Why not share water between two friendly nations? Why not build pipelines that secure the future for both sides? Why not treat water the way oil and electricity have been treated for decades? But Canadians hear something else in that proposal. They hear the loss of control. They hear the beginning of a path they cannot turn back from. They hear a risk to their sovereignty. At its core, this is a clash of philosophies. One side sees water as an economic tool. The other sees it as a part of the land. One sees a chance to solve a crisis. The other sees a future where it becomes tied to forces beyond national control. And now both nations stand at the edge of a new chapter, one shaped not by trade deals, technology, or political speeches, but by something more ancient and more powerful: water. As America's West continues to dry, the pressure will grow. And as Canada holds firm, the tension will rise. This is not a conflict fueled by anger. It is fueled by necessity, by survival, by the quiet truth that without water, nothing else matters. Trump's comments were just the spark. Carney's rejection was the first wall. But the real story is only beginning, because the question both nations must answer now is the one no one wants to say out loud. What happens when a superpower needs what another country refuses to give? And as the rivers shrink and the reservoirs fall, that question is becoming impossible to ignore.